Tonight, area hospitals putting restrictions in place to protect patients amid coronavirus concerns. Plus, a look at the San Antonio Fire Department's COVID-19 preparation and a local elected leader calling for an investigation into the primary elections. And first tonight, an update on the coronavirus as the news changes by the minute. Here are the very latest numbers. The Department of State Health Services has the total number of cases in Texas at 23. That number does not include 8 evacuees in isolation right now at the Texas Center for Infectious Disease here in San Antonio. We have also learned that no San Antonio area public schools have canceled classes, but they are continuing to monitor this situation. We have a full list of local universities that are extending their spring breaks and moving to online classes right now at KSAT.com. Local hospitals are now limiting visitors, checking them for fevers, and even closing some hospital entrances to try to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Tiffany Huertas checked in with several local healthcare facilities and explains what you should expect if you're headed there anytime soon.
U.S. hospitals are taking steps to make sure there is no spread of the coronavirus, including here at home. Beginning tomorrow morning at 5, University Hospital will begin limiting visitors and closing some hospital entrances. When you enter the hospital, visitors will be screened for symptoms of the COVID-19 virus and exposure or travel to a high-risk area.
We're going to be actually doing some screening questions for visitors who come into our facility to make sure that they themselves don't pose a risk to either patients or staff.
Also, patients may only have 2 visitors per day. Patients and visitors must enter through the main entrance from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. or the emergency department, which is 24 hours. The shuttles from the garage to the hospital will drop off only at the adult emergency department. The children's emergency department will remain open 24/7. Methodist Healthcare has also implemented visitor restrictions. Last week, Methodist started limiting certain entrances. Their staff has been screening everyone for travel history, fever, or respiratory symptoms. Here's what the Methodist Healthcare System Chief Medical Officer said then about anyone experiencing symptoms.
We're going to ask them to wear a mask when they're inside our facilities.
Baptist Health System will be questioning patients about their recent travel and symptoms once they enter their hospitals. As for visitors, they will also be screened for symptoms and travel before being allowed inside. Starting tomorrow, temperature checks will be done on all visitors before entering the building. They are also limiting the number of visitors allowed. For the 9, Tiffany Huertas.
Now, if you think you have COVID-19, University Health System says the first thing to do is to call your primary care provider. Sometimes they might not ask you to come to their facility and they can provide guidance. If someone has an inquiry, you can call the Metro Health COVID-19 hotline. That number is 210-207-5779. Myra?
Thanks, Tiffany. And new tonight, we are learning more about the San Antonio Fire Department's coronavirus preparation efforts. It's something that Fire Chief Charles Hood says they've been planning for several weeks now.
This is a response that I don't think I've seen in my history in the fire service, because normally when you plan for something, it's a flood, it's a fire, it's an act of evil, something like that, to where you dropped in and you just start working it. We've been watching the nation and the world experience COVID at a distance, but we've been preparing for multiple weeks.
The first line of protection is screening 911 calls. Dispatchers will ask callers about their symptoms and any travel history before then triggering a COVID-19 response. Once inside, first responders will stay 6 to 8 feet away and determine if the caller has had any underlying health issues that may need treatment at a hospital in a designated ambulance.
The other challenge we have is we don't want to overload the hospital with transporting flu patients. Last year, say, we ran 30,000 flu-related calls. That's without the fear of COVID.
On Tuesday, a man claiming that he'd been exposed to COVID-19 tied up fire department resources. Hood says an ambulance, a fire truck, about a dozen people were put out of service for a period of time. That man later said it was all a hoax. Chief Hood also wants to remind people that this is not a joke, and pulling something like that could land you in jail. Amid all of the coronavirus concerns, a big question has lingered locally. Will Fiesta 2020 happen in San Antonio? Well, tomorrow we should get a better idea. The Fiesta Commission will hold a press conference at 10 a.m. tomorrow. The mayor will also be there. We're told the focus will be on the Fiesta schedule this year. We'll be sure to keep you posted. And we know the news is changing by the minute involving the novel coronavirus every single day. So we will continue to follow the latest developments, and you can expect to find them on KSAT.com. We also have several resources available online, and we have a newsletter dedicated to this very topic. You can sign up to get updates sent straight to your inbox. To sign up, just go to ksat.com/newsletters. Meantime, tonight, police are searching for a man accused of shooting his wife 3 times. A mountain lion caught on camera attacking a deputy, and iron rain discovered on an exoplanet. Here's tonight's 9 at 9. A 19-year-old facing capital murder charges for allegedly stabbing both his mother and sister to death at a Southside home. Police Chief William McManus says he believes there are mental health issues surrounding this attack. 2 women and an infant were found inside the home unharmed. 1 teen killed, another hurt in a shooting at a California mall. Police say it started when a fight broke out in the food court. No information has been released about any suspects.
Police are trying to track down a man who they say stalked his wife this morning, then shot her 3 times as she was driving to work. Bullets also hit an occupied Via bus, but no one was hurt.
Javier de Hoyos is wanted for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Before today's shooting, police say he already had an outstanding warrant for threatening his wife earlier this month. De Hoyos is considered armed and dangerous. Anyone who knows where he is urged to call police. Egypt is facing what's being called an unprecedented crisis as the country deals with an onslaught of heavy rains. Citizens are being asked not to leave their homes unless absolutely necessary. The streets of Cairo already flooded, and the rain isn't expected to stop until Saturday. In Colorado, a mountain lion attacks a sheriff's deputy.
It lunged at the officer. She went like this, luckily. Thank God. I mean, if she had not have put her arm up, it would have just gotten her right here.
Video captured of the attack shows the deputy trying to fight off the lion while she's on the ground. The cat eventually runs away. Investigators say moments before this attack, the animal attacked another person. Both people are expected to be okay. As for the mountain lion, it was shot multiple times and eventually died. A security camera captured what happened after a pair of cars drag raced down a Florida neighborhood street. One of the cars hit a ditch and went airborne, landing hood first upside down.
The top of the car was smashed completely down to the doors. I can't believe that somebody came out of there alive.
Emergency crews were able to rescue 2 teens inside the car. One suffered a couple of broken ribs. It appears iron rain is falling on an exoplanet. An exoplanet is a planet that's outside the solar system. This one is called WASP-76b, and it receives thousands of times the radiation the Earth gets from the sun. Researchers believe blazing temperatures turn molecules into atoms and metal into vapor, which then develops into iron vapor. Heavy winds push the vapor into the cooler side of the planet. That turns the vapor into clouds, which then release the iron rain.
Today, millions of Texas households have received some letters in the mail to respond to the 2020 census. It's a once-in-a-decade effort to count where people live in the U.S.
The census serves as a roadmap for how much federal funding communities get for schools, road construction, Medicare, and Medicaid. All letters should be out by the end of the month. Reading to children can have a significant impact on their development, and experts say that's especially true for babies in neonatal intensive care units. That's why one hospital in Indiana has launched a reading library for NICU families.
So once upon a time, there lived a king and queen who longed for a child.
Premature infants are at really high risk for having language delays, and reading is one of the ways, especially reading by parents, is one of the ways that we can help improve their outcomes.
To read more about these 9 stories, go to KSAT.com. It's kind of unfortunate timing with everything else going on in the world in terms of symptoms and all that kind of stuff, but it's something we're used to here in South Texas. Oak season is here. It's bothering a lot of people, so if you hear some extra sniffles and some extra coughing, don't get too alarmed.
Sorry, I flipped the switch, but then they're telling me.
It could just be oak.
Myra's good at stretching.
I am.
Doing what we call
Yeah.
stretch.
We just keep talking, basically,
Yes.
is what that means.
And typically with the allergens, you don't get a fever or anything like that. That's one of the main differences. Yeah, it's just some runny nose, itchy eyes, and that's mainly what you get. But anyway, usually you don't get a fever with it. But it's that time of year. Look at this. Oh yeah, this is an oak tree. Those are the catkins, the infamous catkins hanging off the branches, and they're pushing out all the pollen right now. And I actually took a picture of the door of my truck earlier today, and you can see all those little dots there. Those are the oak pollen grains. And I'm sure if you park outside for any period of time, today, tomorrow, the rest of the week, well, really the rest of the month and into April, you'll find some of that on your vehicle as well. So typically, oak season peaks late March, early April. Today we had our highest count yet this season of 720, so that's in the high category, and we expect it just to go up from here. 87 was our high today, so well above the average of 73, and we're going to keep this streak of above average temperatures here for the foreseeable future. Right now, readings though, 77 in town, you get to Los Maples 69, we're 80 in Castroville, and for the most part, we're in the 70s. Some locations still hanging on to 80, including Hondo. But look at our high temperatures the rest of the week, through the weekend, and into next week, and not much variation here. It's very similar, upper 70s or about 80 degrees. So don't expect any big changes in terms of temperatures. And this time of year, we typically don't get many cold fronts moving through town, and we don't foresee anything strong that would really push through at the moment. Dew points are in the low to mid 60s, so we're feeling the humidity. It's not oppressive, but it has us in the muggy category, and we'll stay in the muggy category basically from here on out all the way through next week. So here's our overall weather pattern. Of course, where we don't need the rain in Texas, our friends to the north, the I-20 corridor, they're not in a drought. They're not even abnormally dry. They're getting another round of rain, and they'll get more of it. We just had the clouds streaming overhead from the southwest. And this is all out ahead of this big upper level swirl that's near Los Angeles. It's been bringing a lot of rain to the desert. I mean, even Death Valley, California is getting clipped by some rain showers here. You know, we'd love to tap into some of that, but it looks like Big Blue H over Mexico is going to win out, and that's going to keep that energy and the bulk of the moisture too far to the north of us to really have a big impact on our rain chances, at least through the upcoming weekend. And then as we get into next week, we may have some daily isolated to scattered showers, but most of the rain with that upper disturbance will be too far to the north of us. So tomorrow morning, cloudy, a few sprinkles possible and some patchy fog. 66 in the morning, then 80 for the high temperature, and more gray than blue in the sky. And that's going to be the case through the weekend and all of next week as well. With, as I mentioned, temperatures not changing much, and then some daily rain chances next week, but don't get your hopes up just yet, because no day in particular really stands out as being a really good opportunity for some good soaking rain. Right now, just about a 30 to 40% chance. Those pop-up showers pretty much every day next week, Myra.
All right, thanks, Adam. Well, more than a week after Super Tuesday, a Bexar County commissioner is calling for an investigation into the results of the local primary elections. Precinct 4 Commissioner Tommy Calvert wrote a letter today to the Bexar County Judge Nelson Wolf asking that independent forensic investigators the court called for earlier will be hired by the next commissioner's court meeting. The results for the recent election were delayed for hours on election night. We were told that it was all because of a software issue, which caused the new $12.5 million voting system to crash 3 times. In his letter, Calvert said all of these issues warrant an investigation. You're watching KSAT News at 9. We'll be back in just 1 minute. Turning to tonight's top stories, the U.S. has launched airstrikes in Iraq, targeting an Iranian-backed group they believe was responsible for a deadly rocket attack earlier this week. That attack killed and wounded Americans and British troops at a base north of Baghdad. The Democratic National Committee is moving Sunday's presidential debate from Arizona to Washington because of coronavirus concerns. The party had already announced that the debate between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders would be held without a live audience. Moving the debate to CNN studio is meant to reduce cross-country travel. Additionally, one of the debate's moderators, Univision's Jorge Ramos, has stepped down from his role in that debate after possible exposure to the coronavirus. This upcoming debate will be the first one-on-one between Sanders and Biden. Back here at home, it's an issue we've talked about several times on the news at 9, the confusion caused by the state of Texas legalizing hemp. Problems have come up for law enforcement because marijuana and hemp-based CBD products look very similar, and lab tests are required to tell the difference. Complicating things even further, people who take CBD can actually end up failing drug tests. We spoke with San Antonio Express News business editor and columnist Greg Jefferson about this issue earlier this week. He explains it's caused at least one woman to lose her job. The Bexar County Crime Lab potentially being the first in the state to finally be able to distinguish hemp from marijuana, which has been a big giant question mark since Texas law changed back in June.
Right, well, you know, we've got, in the private sector, we've got kind of this weird thing going on. There's a lawsuit working its way through court, state district court. It's brought by a drug counselor named Melanie Farr. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and was advised to take CDC oil, right, to help alleviate her symptoms. She did that. By the way, she, you know, like I said, she is a drug counselor. And so, not surprisingly, her workplace about a year ago did some drug testing. It came back as if she were a total pothead. And by all accounts, she is not. But they fired her nonetheless. She is employed again as a drug counselor, but you know, I think she felt aggrieved, as I think we all would. And it really creates, you know, a weird dichotomy between, you know, drug testing and what it's really going to tell you, and how many false negatives employers are subjected to. And, you know, this clearly, you know, assuming she didn't have a lot of marijuana use, you know, it was a systemic failure, and, you know, got this woman fired. How many other times has that happened?
Yeah.
We don't know.
I know we've covered instances of it here where someone has been, I believe we covered a story where a man was pulled over and he had something that was less than the 0.3% of THC, and he was, you know, taken into custody for that. And I want to make that clear to people. So Texas law changed back in June, saying that 0.3% of THC or higher, that defines marijuana. If it's lower than that threshold, that's hemp, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, all of that said, I would, you know, if you've got a drug test coming up, maybe don't do a CDC or a CBD. Like I was going to say, don't do a bunch of CBD cocktails, like it appears I've done, but I have not. I have not.
Tomorrow at 9, hear our conversation about all the changes happening within USAA. The Pearl development has become one of San Antonio's most popular destinations. It was even the inspiration for the News at 9's recently upgraded set. But that wasn't always the case. The site has gone through several changes over the decades, from its start as a brewery to prohibition and its rebirth after that brewery shut down. RJ Marquez looks at the history of the Pearl in tonight's Throwback Thursday.
Much like the city itself, the story of the Pearl's birth lies along the San Antonio River. The brewery was founded in the late 1800s by German immigrants Otto and Emma Kahler in response to the rapidly growing community of German immigrants who were frustrated by their lack of beverage options. Elizabeth Farso, Chief Marketing Officer at the Pearl, says the river was the ideal location to brew a great Bavarian Pilsner.
At the time, the river was spring-fed, crystal clear waters, and we also had access to wells where they could tap into the aquifer. And so one of Pearl's taglines for years was "From the country of 1100 springs." Pearl rapidly became what was known as the Milwaukee of the South.
But production came to a standstill in 1918 when prohibition laws were passed. The era catapulted the Pearl into different areas, led by Emma Kahler, who had taken over running the business. It was her leadership and ingenuity that kept the Pearl running.
Pearl was able to actually retain all of its employees, basically maintain itself at full capacity by shifting from being a brewery to being a food company. They launched Alamo Foods. They launched an ice company.
Because of its full staff, the Pearl went into immediate production when Prohibition was repealed. That pushed the Pearl into its golden era in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Throughout the decades, it remained part of the city's identity. It had a hand in building Hemisphere and was involved in the stock show and rodeo.
During Fiesta, they had floats, and they would have their jingles sung by Augie Meyer and sponsor concerts, and so it was a real cultural pillar.
Production at the brewery ended in the 90s and the site was abandoned. It did not take long, however, for the Pearl to be reborn and developed into what you see now. Restaurants, retailers, residential units, free events and programming, all from local business leaders and chefs. The Hotel Emma is just one of the centerpieces of the development, with more to come. The Pearl is now one of the most visited areas by local residents and tourists alike. It's been embraced by its neighbors and the entire city.
The intention was not only to renovate the beautiful historic buildings, but also to bring back that sense of dynamism to the neighborhood and bring back Pearl as a neighborhood that is of San Antonio and for San Antonio, that inculcates and supports entrepreneurialism, that is a place that takes care of our families.
For the 9, RJ Marquez.
This is normally the part of the show where we talk about what is trending on our website at KSAT.com. We're going to do something a little bit different today, because if you have been on our website, you have seen it as wall-to-wall coronavirus coverage. As the info changes by the minute.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to talk about other things you can find on our website that are not coronavirus related, but that we feature here on the News at 9. So Farah Sabawi is here to give us a break from all things COVID-19 and talk about what you can find on the News at 9 page.
That's right, Myra. Now, if you need to quarantine yourself for a couple weeks, I don't want you to worry. There's a lot of News at 9 content you can find readily available. KSAT.com/News at 9. Yeah, anytime.
On demand. Okay.
Now, we just watched a great Throwback Thursday segment on the Pearl and how it survived through Prohibition, which was really interesting. And that's one of the series, that's the first series we're featuring right now. So the one I'm picking here in this case is actually the one about the origins of the Japanese tea garden. Great place to take family, you know, when they're visiting out of town, a really lovely place. But it was so interesting to learn about its history and how far back it spans, and also how it fell into, disrepair for several years up until it got revived in the 80s.
So there's a lot of these Throwback Thursdays you can check out on our website, of course. We air them every Thursday.
Yeah.
And tell different stories all around town.
Yeah, so that one is another fun one. Another great one that I think, especially people, the younger generation needs to take advantage of is Money, It's Personal. A great series that our colleague Ivan Herrera does all the time. He's got a business major. He's a smart guy, and so I trust him. I would put my money where he tells me to. But you know what, Myra, with so much going on right now with the stock market and a lot of concerns about your investments, Ivan had a great story that I want to feature here, and it's about the certificate of deposit here. So you can put in money into what's called a CD. And it usually has pretty good interest rates. Now, you can't always pull that money out right away. It depends on which CD you sign up for, and that money stays there for a while. But it is known as one of the safest investments you can do. So if you're worried about how the stock market's looking right now, things like that, and you have some extra money, maybe don't invest it there and actually put it into some more conservative options right now.
Now, we know a lot of this stuff. It's not exciting. It's not trending necessarily, but it's stuff that we all want to know about if we're talking about our investments, how to make the most out of our money. So Money It's Personal takes on a different topic every single week, every Tuesday. We've got a whole bunch of these stories right now on the News at 9.
And our last series that I wanted to promote here today is our Adulting Hack series. Now, this one is a great one because school teaches you a lot, but they don't teach you some of the things, that you think you should know, some of the street smarts that you got to have.
This series is fantastic because it's all about the things that we all should know about, but maybe we're a little embarrassed to ask about because we're adults and we should know these things.
Exactly.
Well, we're here to refresh your memory.
Well, that's one of those things. Now, this one that I picked to feature here today is called it's about proper tipping etiquette. And that's one that, exactly like you said, you don't want to really go up to the person and ask, like, hey, how much should I tip you? Do I need to tip you?
Right.
Those are sometimes a little bit personal questions, but it's a really great resource to look at these things and realize, wow, okay, like you tip 15 to 20% for servers, but you don't need to tip on takeout for, necessarily. So there's a lot of good little things that, we don't always talk about, a little bit lost in the lines that we can flesh out here on Adulting Hacks.
And Adulting Hacks airs every Monday here on KSAT News at 9. So all of this stuff you can find on the News at 9 portion of our website.
Yeah.
You can just search it at the top right, or if you click down, it's one of the
You can go to ksat.com/news@9. Each series is featured on the page in its own section there.
Perfect.
And so it's really easy to go find this content. And again, if you're going to be home for 2 weeks, this is where you should go. Don't worry about Netflix. This is for free.
Look at that. We hardly talked about the spread of disease in this segment.
It feels good. It feels good. It was a good break. I needed it.
All right. Thanks, Ferris.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. We've got some late breaking news just coming into the KSAT 12 newsroom. Our Greg Simmons literally just getting off the phone and confirming these details.
We have just verified through the officials of the Valero Texas Open here in San Antonio that the Valero Texas Open has been canceled. It was originally set to play from April the 2nd to the 7th at the JW Marriott Resort up the TPC course here in San Antonio. But today, the PGA Tour announcing the following is regret. We are announcing the cancellation of the Players' Championship. That actually had already teed off this week, and it was supposed to continue tomorrow. That is not the case. It has been canceled, and in the coming weeks, it will go through the Valero Texas Open. We have pledged from the start to be responsible, thoughtful, and transparent with our decision process. We did everything possible to create a safe environment for our players in order to continue the event throughout the weekend. We're endeavoring to give our fans a much-needed respite from the current climate. But as of this point, as the situation continues to rapidly change, the right thing to do for our players and our fans is to pause. Now, earlier, the Valero Texas Open and the PGA Tour had told us they would continue with it out of the JW Marriott without spectators.
Right, without any fans.
But as of 9 o'clock tonight, 10 o'clock Eastern time, when the PGA Tour sent this release out, and we just verified it, by the way, that event, the Valero Texas Open, is now canceled. And the shame of this, first of all, it was going to be one of the best Valero Texas Open we've ever had because they had the #1 ranked player in the world, Rory McIlroy, who was committed to play before the Masters. And on top of it all, most people don't realize this is one of the granddaddy tournaments in the PGA Tour history. This dates all the way back into the 40s. And in doing so, it also, thanks to the Valero Energy Corporation, it has become the most charitable PGA Tour event in the entire tour of all of their tour events. So that said, this is a major setback, not just for San Antonio, but this is a major setback for the PGA Tour as well.
And you think about all the events that surround an event like the Texas Open, all of the people who work in the service industry, the people who have set up events that just happen in correspondence with this, that they work so hard for to put on every single year.
And this is heartbreaking because this is something, an event that is a year in the making each year, and they have to reset and redo. And now, unfortunately, here just literally days before it's supposed to actually take place. By the way, if you go out to the JW Marriott, it's already set up for the Valero Texas Open. They had the stands up already, the media center up already. They're going over the grounds, but obviously that is all for naught now with today's announcement.
Of course, all of this out of an abundance of caution, I'm sure, with what we're all dealing with right now. Greg, thank you very much for being here. I know you'll have the latest coming up at 10. That is all our time here on the News at 9 tonight. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.